Welcome to Season 4 of Shift Out Loud. This podcast is your invitation to play bigger. What does that mean? It means letting go of the self-limiting beliefs that keep you from stepping into your most powerful version of yourself. My favorite conversations are with people who have made that shift and they move about the world differently because of it. Their setbacks served as a catalyst to change their circumstances, make new decisions, and shift their course. And I hope it inspires you to do the same. So listen in, get inspired, and know I'm right here cheering you on. Hey there, my guest this week is Shannon Smith. Shannon is best known as Chef Shannon, and she spends most of her time traveling and exploring the world for flavors and stories she can bring home to share with others. A native of Oklahoma, she has traveled to over 50 countries where she often cooks in the kitchens of local chefs and home cooks, learning about the ingredients, recipes, and stories that shape their lives. For over 20 years, Shannon has taught cooking classes and hosted dinner events with themed menus based on different locales from her travels. Shannon is also passionate about helping underserved communities and uses her travels to teach impoverished women to cook while helping to finance their businesses using microloan programs. Her charity work has taken her to the Dominican Republic, Honduras, and Rwanda, where she has helped locals striving to improve their businesses and provide for their families. Her cookbook, The Hidden Table, is a collection of her personal travel stories and recipes from tables around the world. You can read more about Shannon at chefshannon.com, but let's learn a little more about her right now. So welcome to the program, Shannon Smith. I'm glad to have you.
Thank you, Tracy. This is exciting.
I know, I'm super excited. And I'm excited for lots of reasons. One, because I think that what you do for a living is amazing. And I have benefited greatly from some of the meals that you've made. So I want to talk about all that. But as you know, this is the name of this program is Shift Out Loud. And it's about those moments where you made a decision, something happened, and it shifted how you move about the world. And so I'm anxious to share your story with the audience because I do know a little bit about your story, but let's give a better introduction. Tell the audience, where did you grow up? So let's just do a little basic information. So where did you grow up, and tell us a little bit about you.
I've always lived in Oklahoma, and I grew up in a little town called Tuttle, and it's south of Oklahoma City. I grew up on a small ranch with my parents and my two sisters, and it was a quiet, really very pleasant place to live and place to grow up. It was a wonderful experience for me.
So you grow up on a ranch. Like, how does that happen? Like, where is your family ranchers? How did you end up on the ranch?
No, we were a city family for a long time, but my father, who's a native of Oklahoma City, he was is a businessman, and his dream was to be a cowboy. And so when I was in 6th grade, he and my mom started looking for places out in the country to live. And they found this little ranch where my dad bought probably 10 head of cattle and a few horses, dogs and cats. That's all the animals we had. We had gardens. And so he got to ride his horse. He'd come home from work, as an accountant, get on his horse. And in the wintertime, we'd break the ice in the troughs so that they could all have water. It was a learning experience for all of us, but it was wonderful.
So you loved it.
Yeah, I did.
Interesting. So you're a city girl now. So the idea that you grew up on a ranch is probably a surprise to people that know you. Yes.
Mhm. Probably. I mean, there's still some country in me.
Yeah. Well, and when you said I've always lived in Oklahoma, so in your travels, do you get like comments that like Oklahoma? Why you've been all over the world? Why Oklahoma? Do you get that? Because I get that everywhere.
I do. People, um, and it's interesting how many people have heard of Oklahoma. It seems like everybody has heard of the Oklahoma City Thunder, the basketball team. So that is a trigger for people when I say that. The other is tornadoes. Everybody associates Oklahoma with tornadoes. And I've been asked, why do you live in Oklahoma when there are tornadoes? And I've grown up with them, never been in one, but I'm so proud of Oklahoma. I'm proud to say that I live here, and I'm live in Tulsa. I've been in Tulsa for 35 years, and I'm super proud of Tulsa. and I like to promote it all the time, everywhere I go.
Me too. I mean, but I'm in and out of being super proud right now. Just, but I guess most people, most places are saying that, I would imagine. And for the audience, the crackling that you're hearing, if you're not watching this, which we hope that you can watch the link as well. There's a big, beautiful fireplace behind Shannon that's crackling a bit. So that's the noise that you might be hearing. So how do you get off the ranch? What happens? What's the shift that takes you away from Tuttle, Oklahoma?
Well, I'll start with my high school experience in total, which was uh, a great experience. There were 103 in my graduating class, but the my very first year of high school, I enrolled in a class called home economics, and most people know home economics. It's kind of coming back. It went away for a long time because uh, people weren't as interested, and there was more of a focus away from uh, homemaking. But I had this amazing home economics teacher named Miss Craig, and she was my teacher all 4 years of high school. And because of her, I wanted to pursue a career in home economics. I actually wanted to be a teacher, a home economics teacher.
Nice.
And so I left the ranch to go to college and to study home economics. So that's what took me off the ranch. And honestly, I never went back.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back. So Mrs. Craig, shout out to Mrs. Craig. I don't know if she's
Mhm.
still around or not, but so
Yes.
so you do 4 years. Did everybody have to do home ec for 4 years
No,
in your okay,
it,
so
it was an option. Most of the girls took home economics. I think they assumed it was going to be an easy class. Plus, Miss Craig was known for being really fun, and it was you got to cook, you got to sew and do all, those things that back in the 80s were, I guess, interesting, especially if you weren't an athlete, although a lot of athletes took the class too. If you were a boy, you took Miss Craig's class called Bachelor Survival. That's what they called it, Bachelor Survival. And so they learned a lot of the same things, but only as boys.
that's so interesting. So
Yeah,
we didn't want them to have to take a home ec class. We wanted it to sound better for them or
that's
something, right?
right.
Oh,
Yeah.
bleh. Anyway,
I
okay.
forgot all you just brought that back to me. I forgot about that.
It's interesting, isn't it? And no wonder like this thing anyway, okay, I'm not gonna but they should have had to take home ec as well though, right?
It
That's
was the 80s, Tracy. Nobody even thought about it, I
But
don't think.
we're back in the 60s and 70s now anyway. Anyway, so you want to further your home ec experience.
Mhm.
So tell the audience a bit
So
about that.
I'll tell you a story about my freshman year, and it was, first of all, home ec, a lot of people associate with sewing and cooking. There was a lot more to it. But of those two topics, sewing was my favorite. And b- long before I started taking that class, I learned to sew from my mother. She sewed all of my clothes and my sister's clothes. And I was fascinated by that. I love to make things. I love to create things. So she let me use her sewing machine when she wasn't using it. So I loved to sew. So the sewing part of home economics was where I excelled. And we had a project. There was a unit called child development where we learned how to take care of babies and whatever they taught us about raising little babies and children. In that unit, she gave us an assignment, which was to create a toy. And the toy had to be interactive, it had to be colorful, teachable. And so she said we could do anything we wanted. It might be something made out of wood. I mean, it could be anything. I could not wait to get home and make my toy. And I, of course, did it at the sewing machine. And I regret usually that I don't still have that toy, but as I remember, it was a bear, and it was made out of all different colors of felt. So it was, I remember, red, purple, green, blue, all these colors. And the bear I made it little clothes. And the clothes had like a giant button that you had to button, and snaps and little pockets that you could put things in. and a tie where you had to tie a bow, like, to learn to tie a shoe, kind of, I was thinking these things. I take this to school, and Miss Craig holds it up in front of the class and says, "This is the perfect example of what this assignment was about." I and she just went on and on. She asked me if she could keep it to show that her other classes. And that was a very defining moment for me because I had pleased her, which was my goal. And I made me just feel so good. And I thought, I can do this. I would be a great teacher, or I want to be a teacher. And it made me want to sew more. It didn't make me want to have babies and do all that yet, but it was from then on. I mean, that was my freshman year. And from then on, I wanted to please her and be the best home ec student. I wanted to be the one that she always said, Shannon Smith, or Shannon, uh, did it right.
Yeah. Interesting. I love that. I do know that you have a big competitive kind of streak in you. So I can see you like being, I'm going to
Mhm.
be the best one
Right.
every time. Yeah, I love that.
So if I can fast forward to senior year, where I
Yeah.
had another experience that didn't turn out so great, and that was during this, again, the sewing unit, we had to make an entire outfit. And mine was a seersucker pink prairie skirt. If you'll remember what those were, it was these layers of ruffles and then a matching blouse with big puffy sleeves. I, as you said, am competitive, and one of my things, I like to be first. And I wanted to be the first to complete my project. So I did it very quickly and I turned it in. I was so proud. I knew she was going to be so happy. And she called me up to her desk and she said, Shannon, you have to redo this. I need you to take it completely apart. Your gathers are not even, because there were ruffles all over this garment. And she said, you need to take it apart and make it even. And I was crushed, absolutely crushed, because I disappointed her. I went home, I did redo that, um, and got an A on the project. But it taught me a great lesson about being too speedy, which I still tend to do, but also later when I had a 10-year career in sewing, my gathers were always perfect because of that mistake that I made with her.
Of course they were.
Yeah.
So you end up at, where did you go to college and
I went
tell
to
us?
Oklahoma Christian College in Edmond.
Okay.
Hmm.
And
Finished
you're
4 years. It was an experience, and then I went on to graduate school at Oklahoma State University.
okay. And so there is an actual major called home ec at that university.
Yes.
Okay.
And as far as I know, I am the last home economics degree from the school. After that, they changed it to not just the umbrella of home economics. They divided it into different degrees like nutrition and child development, interior design, those things. But the home economics, I will claim that last degree.
Well, so what was the dream? So what's the shift out of that? So you go as a home ec, what you want to come out of there and do what with that?
I wanted to be a teacher, a high school home economics teacher like Miss Craig was. That was my goal. When I probably in my junior year, I was taking the education classes that were required and had to do my student teaching. And they put me in a school, seventh grade classroom, I think in Del City. And it was horrible. It was a terrible experience. The kids did not want to be there. They were very irreverent to the teacher. She was cussing at them, and it was complete a disaster. And after a few weeks of that, I decided this was not for me. If it wasn't going to be my little Tuttle home economics environment, I can't do this. So I still kept the home ec, but I changed to a business minor instead of the education. So at that point, I didn't know what I was going to do because my dream, I was going to be a teacher the rest of my life. And so I went on to graduate school to study functional clothing design and was a graduate teacher. I taught all the freshman sewing classes and retail classes, teaching the ones that were going into merchandising or buying of in clothing. I taught a class where they learned what all the different buttonholes look like and what the different hems and things like that so they can identify different parts of a garment.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and I think most people that know you, you know, if you just knowing that you are a chef, this idea that you have this big career, really, the beginning of your career is all about being a seamstress. And is that the right term, by the way?
Yes,
Okay.
it is for me.
So you had this big sewing career, and so talk a little bit about that. So you are making clothes and drapes and all the things,
Right.
right?
For 10 years. So I moved to Tulsa and I got married to someone I met at Oklahoma State. He moved me to Tulsa and I didn't know what I was going to do. So put the word out that I could make garments for people, custom clothing. And so I was making ball gowns and costumes and all kinds of uh, fancy garments and a lot of casual, a lot of coats and things. I started working at a high end fabric store, and they sent all of their clients to me. So there were times when I had 30 projects at one time, and I was working 16-hour days just in my sewing room. And in addition to that, started a drapery workroom making draperies and interiors. But it was a grueling experience, physically and emotionally. You know, women, I sewed for a lot of elite people who wanted perfection, expected me to make them look a certain way that I couldn't control. I mean, there were a lot of things with that, but I did that for 10, 11 years.
Nice. So what's the shift out of that?
Well, I had two very young children, and I decided for a lot of reasons that I wanted to get a divorce from their father. And so I asked for the divorce. I had an attorney. It was not a great experience at all. She told me, she said, Shannon, if you want sole custody, which I did, you need to get a job with a paycheck so that you can prove to the judge you can support those children. Because at the time I was just taking cash for clothing. And so I got a job with a nonprofit here in Tulsa teaching cooking and nutrition to underserved kids in an apartment complex that was state funded. I also was going downtown to Catholic Charities and working with Madonna House, which is a home, they called it at the time, a home for unwed mothers. And so these were single women who were living there during their pregnancy. So I would go to both of these places and teach little cooking classes. I loved it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm finally a teacher," which is what I always wanted to do. And I get to cook, but I didn't know how to cook. That was the problem. I mean, I'd taken all these my mom, I mean, I haven't told you, I grew up in the house. My mom was great. She was a great homemaker, but she did not enjoy cooking at all. We ate out of cans, a lot of hamburger meat, TV dinners, frozen stuff, and I mean, I didn't know you could make brownies that weren't in a box. Everything came out of a box. So I learned from Miss Craig a lot, but I hadn't been cooking. Even when I was married for those 10 years, I didn't have time to cook. We were eating baked potatoes and casseroles. So now I'm teaching these kids, and it was easy enough because I could teach them the baked potatoes and all of that, and I knew enough about nutrition because I had taken that in college. But it really sparked an interest. I thought, I love this cooking thing. I want to learn how to cook. And so I went to a little cooking school here in Tulsa, and it was wonderful. It was called The Professional Chef was the name of the class. And it was taught by a professional chef. And there were three of us in the class. And every Monday night for 12 weeks, we would start at 6 and end at midnight. And I tell you, the teacher is now the executive chef of Prosimo here in Tulsa, and he gave me so much confidence. I give him a lot of credit for helping me. He was 27 at the time, and I was in my early 30s mid-30s, so I was, older than he, and he was hard on me, really hard on me because he wanted things done right, and it was very humbling to me, but he taught me how to cook. And then it just a lot more went on from there to where it is now, but that was a big shift for me from the sewing career to a cooking career because I eventually made it a career and did not look back at the sewing until much later.
Have you seen The Bear, the show The Bear?
I have.
Do you, I mean, so when you were describing him being hard on you, of course, season three is all about. Did you enjoy watching that, or was it too close to home for you?
Well, for one thing, that's a restaurant, and I've never been a restaurant chef. So I have cooked in restaurant kitchens before because I collab with a lot of other chefs, but never as my main job. So did I was not close to home because I haven't experienced that day to day like they have on the Bear, but I've seen it. And so it was a little stressful for me to watch that. I know it was very real, but by the time season 3 came out and everyone was talking about it on social media, I thought, I'm not gonna watch it. I didn't watch season 3. I don't watch much TV, Tracy, and it's that was I just thought, I'm not gonna spend my time watching that.
Season three, and this is just a plug for The Bear, is about the characters. So it's not about the cooking nearly as much. It's like it kind of contextualizes all the characters. Back to you. So this is about you, not that show. So now you're full on in the chef business. You just said that you've never been a chef at a restaurant. So how do you become a chef? You go to all these classes, you get all these certificates, you hang a shingle. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So, I continued to take classes at this school. They hired me to teach some of their evening courses, and then I started teaching, classes out of my home. By this time, I was remarried. I was single for 5 years, and that's during that times when I was learning, I met a man who started taking me around the world, and we would travel. And I had done a study abroad program for a semester in college, but I had not been back to Europe. It'd been 15 years. And as we traveled together, we would do all the things that you do as a tourist, like go to the museums, go to, the monuments, and I enjoyed that. But what I really was so intrigued by was the markets. We'd go into markets, and I just wanted to meet those people. I wanted to talk to these locals. I wanted to poke my head into the restaurant kitchen and see how they made things. And it was just an itch that I wanted to scratch, really, of immersing into cultures. So I started really trying to figure out how I could do that. This was back when cooking classes, in Europe or Italy and all was not, it wasn't a big thing. It was really kind of just starting. So you couldn't just Google cooking class in Italy and it would come up a bunch of options. And so I did a lot of digging and finally started finding people who I had to convince that I was serious and to convince to let me come into their home or restaurant chefs to convince them that I wanted them to teach me something. And I would pay them, but no one had ever asked them before. I mean, I was new to them too. And so then I started traveling alone and finding these people and doing these experiential trips where it was completely food focused and people focused. I'm very much on relationships and not just learning something, but I want to learn how did you learn to make this, and tell me the story of your family and your grandmother that taught this to you. And they would take me to markets and teach me the ingredients and the stories behind that. So I was accumulating these stories, and I would come back to Tulsa and I would write the stories and write the recipes and then invite people to come to cooking classes so I could teach that. And then eventually I started putting on what I call experiential dinners. So it might be a night in Mexico, a night in Morocco, a night in Greece, always from places where I've been, and people come, and I put these dinners on.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me about the first time you went in somebody's home for them to teach you how to cook. What's the
Yeah, that
memory?
was in Rome. And this was a woman named Diane Seed. She had a huge impact on me. She was an older woman. She was in her 70s. And I found her online somehow and found out that she taught cooking lessons out of her apartment in Rome, as well as she did what she called them gourmet tours, which in many countries around the world, where she would just take 3 or 4 people and they would do a trip as I had described earlier. So I emailed her and said, I'm going to be in Rome. Can I take a cooking class from you? And she said, on this date. And she replied, I'm sorry, I only do 3-day classes. And I only had the one day in Rome. So I wrote back anyway, two or three more emails. I begged, and she said, okay, you can come. So I showed up in her apartment, which was on like the third or fourth floor of an ancient building that you looked out the window and you saw the Colosseum. It was, and so I'd never been in an apartment or a home in Italy. And that was probably my third trip to Italy. And even though she was British, but she had lived in Rome for 40 years and had studied all over Italy. And so we cooked together all day. And of course, it began as just a cooking class and just very, very formal. And then I remember sitting at her dining room table, and I was taking notes as she was teaching me things about different cuisines all over Italy. And I was writing all these notes. And she said, I have never seen anyone write so many notes from one of my classes. She said, you really are serious about this. And I said, I am. And she said, would you be interested in going to Sicily with me next year? And I said, yes. So that I did that. That was my first trip. That was my first trip alone, was going on that trip. And I ended up going to Turkey, Morocco, Sri Lanka, and India with her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Very nice. So you are keeping all of these recipes, all of these stories in some, uh, notebook that ends up being a book, which we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. But was the goal always to write the book with all of that, or was it just for your own personal knowledge? What was your thinking when you are taking all those notes? You were just trying to learn?
partly I wanted to learn, but the other part is I wanted to teach it when I got home. Writing a book was never in the plan, ever in the. I had people ask me, when are you going to write a book? And the answer was always, never would I do that. I was not a trained writer. It was not even an option. But I like to learn. I'm very curious. And I ask a lot of questions, and people like that. People, they want to feel important, and I see that, and I want to hear from them.
So take me through. So that these are a lot of big shifts. So this shift are you at this point not doing any of the sewing anymore? You've gone all in to like you had. I think you have said you had a drapery business at one point. You had all those businesses are now by the wayside. You're full on in the chef business, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I left my sewing room. Now that's not true. I've always had a sewing room in my house, but I left it except for an occasional repair, repairing something, or hemming my daughter's school uniform. That was it. I had really some bad memories and bad experiences in my head from that career, and I did not want to return to it.
Ask you to sew a button on ever. Just so
Oh,
you
I love to sew. Actually, I love sewing buttons.
that's funny.
Love to iron. Iron. I'm a very good ironer.
Nice. Very good to know. Good to know. So you're doing these dinners. Let's just like for the audience, what would I expect? First of all, how would I, come to know about your dinners, and what would the expectation be? Do people come as groups? Do people sign up? How does that work?
Well, most people learn about it on social media. I do have a website. You mentioned it, chefshannon.com, and where I post these dinners or classes that I'm going to do. So people, and then I have, of course, an email list. And so those people are the first to learn about any event I'm going to have at my home. And I do them all in my home now. And so they, it's interesting. I do a lot. I call those my public events, which means they're out there. Anybody can sign up and buy a ticket to them. And then I have more so I do private. So people, corporate, girlfriend groups, couples, groups come, birthday parties, anniversaries, all kinds of different things like that. So groups will come, they come into the house, and I have a thing. I mean, the minute you walk in, you're going to be handed a drink and something to eat. It's very important to me. I've been to dinner parties where you wait an hour before you get to taste anything, and that's not how it is at my house. And so they come in, and then if it's spring or fall, we do it outside. And I have a beautiful outdoor space with tables set. I have a wonderful team of people that we set the tables beautifully with, kind of to go along with the theme. If it's Mexico, it's colorful textiles that I brought back from Mexico, flowers, candles, beautiful dishware that I collect from around the world. And so they will eventually, everybody sits down, and then we start, and it's a 5-course dinner. And I go out and I tell stories between each course. I tell stories that might be about the person that taught me how to make this. It might be about the ingredient or the place or the history. And I just talk, and people eat. And then after the 5th course, but this is what I absolutely love to watch. And I've watched it for many years since I started this. The connections that are made at that table, and that's another whole topic that goes back to when I was teaching those kids in the apartment complex, where I saw the connections when people are eating around a table, they become friends. And I've seen so many, there have been people hired around my table. There have been relationships started around my table, business relationships, personal relationships. It's incredible. I could write a book about that, honestly, about the number of connections that are made. So, but then it goes on, and then everybody goes. So it's usually a 2 to 3 hour event. And I try to have a little parting gift for everyone. So it might be, if it, for example, in Mexico, they might get a packet of a Mexican chili to take home, or from Italy, it might be a little bottle of olive oil. So everybody kind of gets a little party favor also.
Yes. Listen, I have been to one of these events, and for the audience, I don't think there's any way to capture the magic that I felt when I was around your table, but the amount of care that goes into that to curating that dinner. That's a 3-day, from what I understand and have watched. You need to give a shout out to your team though, because you do have an amazing team. Let's name the people on your team.
I do. Maddie is my assistant, and she works with me every day. She is the one who I have given her the responsibility of setting the tables, and she's just wonderful at learning different napkin folding techniques. And we've started doing our own flowers mostly. So we have a lot of fun ordering flower vases and things. So she does that, and it was fun. I had to teach. She did not know how to set a table when she first started working for me. So that's her job. Plus, she is a graphic artist, so she makes all the menu cards. She's wonderful. Then I have Jennifer, who is a teacher at a high school, or at a elementary school, so she comes and helps serve. And then I have Jessica, who is a nurse, and she comes and she's been working for me for about 6 or 7 years. And I'll say this about her. She has 5 sons. She was a Boy Scout leader for like 16 years. And she has in her car a tackle box. And I'm talking a huge tackle box that she has turned into a first aid kit. She actually taught this to the Boy Scouts. So I love to have her come in every once in a while. I have her show it to my guests, the dinner guests, just because it's so cool. And of course, anytime somebody cuts themselves or is sick or what, she's got the answer. So she's our resident nurse. Then I have Nanette. Nanette is from Mexico. She has worked with me for about 15 years, and we call her the quiet angel because she doesn't talk much. She doesn't want to serve. She doesn't want to be in front of people. So she's in the back washing dishes and cleaning up. And that's what she enjoys. So I have a really good team of people.
You do, you do.
Mhm.
Uh, I love that. I love that they've all been with you so long as well. So what's your favorite thing to make? Like if, and here's what I would imagine that some people want to hire you and then you say, what do you want? And I'm going to guess statistically, they go, whatever you want to make. Does that ever happen? Or do people go, no, we want the India experience. We want the Moroccan experience. Or do they want the around the world, which you're kind of famous for, which is a little bit of everything?
I give people options, especially corporate. In December, I do mostly corporate events for their holiday parties. And I give them options. I'll say, I can do Mexican. And when I say Mexican, that's authentic Mexico, not Tex-Mex. Italian, I'll give them all these options. And then I say, or you can have the around the world, which you just mentioned, which means it's 5 courses. Each course is from a different country from where I've cooked. And almost always they choose that one. And that is my most favorite dinner to put on and because I can change it up all the time. But in answer to your original question, when you said, what's my favorite thing to cook?
Yes.
I don't. I wish I had an answer. I can tell you my favorite things to eat, but I can't tell you my favorite things to cook because it's different all the time. I just got back from India last week, so right now I want to cook Indian food.
Okay.
There are times, in the summer I want to be on the grill, making that. So it changes all the time.
Is there anything that you just don't like? It's a labor of love. You're like, I'm going to make it because it's the thing. Is
Oh,
there anything?
lots of things.
Okay, I got you.
There are lots of labors of love. But I love cooking so much. It's a therapy for me. The time, I mean, I could be, it just, there's no, I can look at the clock and I've been doing cooking for 8 hours and it felt like two. Yeah.
So, gosh, listen, when I think about, what you do and the cooking and all the things, I think about the travel. So like for you, just, to exclamation point that, you have married two of what seems to be your passions, traveling and cooking in a way that, not many people, I've never met anybody else that does that, that goes somewhere just to cook with people and yet most people, I would imagine, want to go with you. And you have said a couple of times, like, I don't want to ever be the touring chef. Like, is that true? Do people want to like go on some of your excursions with you?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Just last night I had a group say, will you take us with you? And I just kind of laugh and go, oh, maybe someday, knowing it will never be that way. Or I can't say never. I've said never too many times in my life. I won't say never. I travel about 40% of the year or more. I've been to 53 countries, many of them multiple times. Italy, I've been 40 times to Italy. That's my favorite country. And uh, so, but as far as leading a tour group, that's not in my plan at all. I have enjoyed traveling alone for the past few years. I'll tell you, there's been a shift there also because I kind of went through that for 5 years of traveling by myself. I meet up with friends or I meet people there. So I'm not alone all the time, but there's a lot of alone time. And it started to get lonely last year, really. And I've decided not do that so much and start going with people I care about and doing it a little differently.
So that whole travel experience, and Italy's your favorite, you go there 40 times. Where have you not been that you really wanna go?
I have not been to South Africa, and I'm going to go there next month. I have not been to Thailand. I would like to go there. I haven't been to Singapore. I have not been to Japan, or I haven't been to Brazil. South America is fascinating to me. I've been to only 4 countries in South America. So Brazil is one of them, Ecuador also. So there are places. The list is so short, Tracy, of places I really strongly desire to go because I've already done so much. I feel very, very fortunate.
Nice. So what's the shift that you're looking forward to next?
That's interesting because I turned 60 this year, and that's a shift. That's a hard one for me, to be honest. I'm struggling with that number. And so I've been thinking a lot of what is the change, what am I going to do in my 60s? Because my 50s have been amazing, best decade of my life. And I can only hope that my 60s I'd be happy if it was equally as wonderful, but I have a feeling it's going to even be better. So I'm going to continue the dinner, putting on these dinners for at least 5 more years. As far as a shift, I'm not sure. I mean, there are some things that I'm working on, but not sure what the next shift is. It's maybe another book. I don't know.
Interesting. Well, you'll have to come back and tell us about it if that happens. And I wanna give a plug for the book and say this because I went to one of your dinners and, I believe that was a parting gift. If I remember, that was how I received the first book. But I had also bought one, as you know. But I remember coming home and I was like, I wanted to be able to talk to you about the things that were in your book. So I thought I'm gonna read through it. But I got really lost in the book. And there were two things that struck me, and everyone's gonna say the same thing to you. But like you're telling it's a travel book as much as it is a cooking book, right? Like you're talking about the travels. There's pictures of people that you have met, the stories that are in the book. It's beautifully done, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, but I was trying to find, and you know this because you've seen the book, but for the audience, I'll describe it. I was like, well, I'm going to put, what are my favorite recipes in here that I want to learn how to cook. I think I have like, I don't know, 20 sticky notes in there that I couldn't narrow it down. So, and you're very generous. Not only that, yes, everybody should buy your book for sure, but your website has a lot of resources, as well. So you really are, I think, trying to influence a bunch of people to cook in a big way. Like I have friends that will send me pictures now of things that they've made out of your cookbook. How do you feel when people are cooking your stuff and sending you pictures?
It's one of the most flattering things that someone can do. I'm so really honored when it happens. I've had cookbook clubs that have contacted me and told me they were going to cook from my book for the entire year
Wow.
because there are 12 chapters in the book. We haven't really talked about that, but there are 12 chapters, and of course there are 12 months in the year. So there have been clubs that have started that, others that, you chose one chapter to cook, for their dinner club. So that's always, makes me feel good, of course. Um, when people purchase, I've had a lot of people purchase the book to give as gifts over the Christmas holidays, and it's it. I woke up Christmas morning, honestly, thinking, "Oh my gosh, how cool is this that my book is going to be opened on Christmas morning?" And people are going to see it, and my hope is that they read it. It is a storybook and a recipe book, and it's each chapter is a different country or place, and with the stories and the recipes from that. It's called The Hidden Table because it's about many of the hidden tables. I call them that from around the world. But I tell people really the recipes are special, but the stories are much more special to me. That was the hardest part to write. And I mentioned 80 people in that book that influenced me. There are 80 names in there, and many of those people I, got to present the book to them around the world. Just last week, when I was in India, I got to give it to my friend Vapav, who was my original guide on my second trip to India. And so I got to see him. I hadn't seen him in almost 10 years and give him the book. So uh, it's cool to me to think it's all around the world, just sitting in people's kitchens. And my hope is that they're reading the stories. I don't care if they cook one thing out of the book. I mean, look at the pictures, because the photography by Valerie Wayhouse is extraordinary, and so I want people to recognize her also.
Yeah, when you were mentioning your team, I was like, because she's definitely on the team, and I do follow you on social media, as you know, and the photography of just like your trips. So you have been very smart to invest in capturing all of that. And then obviously it turns into a cookbook and a big social media empire that you've got going on. But Val's so unbelievably talented. So yeah, and
Yes.
I know.
And regarding travel, she and I have traveled to 8 countries together. She's actually been to Mexico with me 3 different times, but 8 countries, and she's an incredible travel partner. She's the age of my daughter, but we just have this really sweet friendship, and she documents our travels so well and so beautifully. And it's not just for me, but it's for her own portfolio too. And but the collaborating with her in the book, we've worked together for 9 years, 10 actually. This year is the 10th year. And so when this book project came up, I said, there's no one else I would want to photograph this
That's right.
than Valerie. And then her husband, Evan, is the one that manages. He's my branding manager and does my website. And so that's my team too. You're right. I didn't mention them. They're amazing.
Right.
I could not run my business without them. No way.
I love that. So tell all the audience a little bit about the microfinancing that you do to help underserved communities.
That started about 20 years ago. I was married to Phil Smith, who was the author of 2 books about microfinance. And what microfinance is, it's a banking program that helps give small loans to people that want to start a business. And it's mostly effective in underserved communities or third world countries. And it's mostly used by women. And so, because he was so involved in that, I became involved, on the financial part. We were donating to a lot of these programs around the world. At that time, I had young children, so that's really all I could do. Once my kids went to college, I thought, I want to do something more with this, not just contribute and talk about it. I want to actually do something with these women. So I started going to Dominican Republic and working with a microfinance program called Esperanza. And I have some really cool stories about the 2 times I went there. I worked teaching sewing, so that kind of came back into my life because they asked me to teach sewing. And they have no electricity, no running water. When many people think of Dominican Republic, they think of these gorgeous beaches, these luxury resorts, and don't consider that 50 yards behind those resorts is extreme poverty, which is the case in many Caribbean countries. But these women were in good standing on their loans for different little businesses. So I went and I got to teach them these sewing classes with that, just hand sewing. That we also had machines that did not operate by electricity. At the same time, I was teaching them some cooking classes, just out over open fires out in the jungle. I did that on 2 different occasions and loved it. I was working with a program in Rwanda, Africa, and went over and got to see those programs, how they were being used by these people. They also have a savings programs teaching these very impoverished people how to save money. And they had a banking program for them, and it's just fascinating. Microfinance is fascinating. And as a result, I met someone while I was there who runs a school. She lives in Colorado, but she runs this school called Hope Haven in Rwanda. So I went and visited them on 2 different trips. Now I'm very involved with that, raising money by selling my dinners at their auction. And so I thought, this is really enjoyable for me, and I think for the women to work with them where I'm teaching and they're learning something from me. Of course, I'm learning a lot from them too. And so that's the microfinance part. I haven't done a lot with that in recent years since COVID, but more recently, as you mentioned, in India, when I was there, I found a foundation in Delhi that serves women in a homeless shelter. It was hard to find this organization because, like, for about 2 years, I've been trying to find a project in India. And so Valerie and I went and worked with 23 women for 3 days, and they also wanted me to teach sewing. So it kind of all came back where I wasn't doing that. I was like, I don't teach sewing, but I did.
You did.
And we sewed for 2 days. And one of my other hobbies is making jewelry, beading jewelry. So I took all these kits. And so one day we made bracelets with these women. It was an extraordinary experience, and none of it, in all those cases, no one spoke English. The only way I could communicate was through my translator. And that's something I've you know learned is, the international language that we all share is that of smiling and hugging. We can all do that.
That's right.
And there's a lot of that goes on when I'm teaching these programs. So yes, it's very important to me to give back the skills that I have. And I try to do that in Tulsa also. I look for opportunities to do that and help people,
Nice.
particularly women and children.
I love that. And listen, you got to go to her social media because the pictures are just, uh, they're beautiful, beautifully done. But I loved just watching. You were making a difference. And I also love that the thing that you wanted to do more than anything was teach, and that you've been teaching all over the world this whole time. So well done, friend. Well, listen, as we come to a close, let's tell the audience how can they find the book, how they can find you, what are all of the places that people could find you.
Well, the website is chefshannon.com. On Instagram, it's Chef Shannon Smith. Same on TikTok, Chef Shannon Smith. And that's how you can find me. The book can be ordered on Amazon or on the website, and it's called The Hidden Table.
Listen, I look forward to many more dinners around your table, and thank you for making the time to come on and be introduced to my audience. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. This has been a pleasure talking to you. You're a great interviewer.
That's a wrap for this episode of Shift Out Loud. A big thank you to our guest, Chef Shannon Smith, for sharing her story and inspiring us all. Visit her website at chefshannon.com. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Shift Out Loud.